Thank you, Alistair. Now, much has been made mention of, including in the remarks of His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, the importance of Article 18. And it's worth remembering that Article 18 was born, really, out of the cinders and the horrors of the extermination camps at Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen, the horrors of the show of the Holocaust. And this was a great plea from those who met from the international community at that time that these things should never happen again, but too often never again has happened all over again. I was very struck when rereading the testimony given by Pastor Martin Niemöller to the United States Congress, I think in 1953, when he was asked the question, how was it that in a nominally Christian country like Germany, where there were so many Catholics and Lutherans, how was it that these horrors came about? And of course he famously said, well, first they came for the trades unionist, and because I wasn't a trades unionist, I did nothing. Then they came for the Jews, and because I was not a Jew, I did nothing. Then they came for the Catholics, and because I was a Protestant, I did nothing. And then they came for me. And that underlines really what Alistair has just said, and many other speakers have said, about how these things hold together, how our freedoms hold together. It's what the Minister was saying to us earlier on, that these freedoms are connected one to the other, and that we must stand for each other in these situations, because if we don't, then the circumstances will ultimately be pretty bleak for us as well. Perhaps to remind us a little of the enormities of those events in the 20th century, we're going to hear now from Martin Stern. Martin was born in the Netherlands in 1938 to a Jewish architect and a non-Jewish German wife who were refugees from Berlin. His father was forced to go into hiding following the Nazi invasion and was eventually captured and sent to Auschwitz and Buchenwald concentration camp, where he died. Martin was hidden by friends of his parents in Amsterdam, near the very house where the young Anne Frank penned her diary during the same period. However, Martin was arrested at school in 1944, and he and his one-year-old sister Erika were sent to the Westerbork transit camp in the Netherlands and then to Versteinstadt concentration camp in Czechoslovakia. But again, Martin experienced great kindness, this time from a Dutch lady who kept him and Erika in the women's dormitories. Once liberated, Martin returned to the Netherlands, but was refused a Jewish upbringing. Eventually, he was transferred to his Jewish family in Manchester. He went to Manchester Grammar School and then to Oxford University to study medicine, becoming a clinical immunologist specialising in asthma and allergies. He's married with 3 married children and 4 granddaughters. Please welcome Martin to the podium now.
Your Graces, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming, and thank you to ACN. When, after World War II in the Netherlands, after the Nazis' failed attempt to murder my one-year-old sister and myself, and I was trying to come to terms with the murder of my father and his in Buchenwald and his brother in Auschwitz, the thought that Christians might one day be a major persecuted group in the world never entered my head. But so it has turned out. When the newsletter of the Barnabas Fund hits my doormat, I open it with trepidation. I have learned to read it with caution, just as I exercise caution about how much I read about the horrors of the Holocaust. Excuse my simple-mindedness, but I fail to see the difference between a dead Jew like my father, or a dead Yazidi, or a dead Ahmadi, or Shia, or Sunni, or a dead Baha'i, or a dead Christian. If that death is due to persecution and quasi-tribal conflict. The situation with my family arose after centuries of often vehement and often casual anti-Semitism, My grandparents were Germanized. They called my father's brother Wilhelm, which was, of course, also the name of the Kaiser. He served in the German army and, for all I know, may have shot a relative of somebody in this room during the First World War. But under the Nazis, the Jews gradually had their rights whittled away little bit by little bit. I have on my desk at home a big book which details the 2,000 laws that were passed under Nazism against the Jews. It wasn't at a stroke, it was salami tactics. Until in the end, most of the Jews who found themselves, like my parents, in the Netherlands, had only one freedom left, the freedom to step forward somewhere into a gas chamber in Western Europe or to be shot in Eastern Europe in industrialized mass slaughter. Yet at the same time there were bright points. My father was hidden on a tiny farm near Amsterdam airport, a Protestant, devoutly religious Protestant family that felt it had the duty to help Jews in their troubles. The farm was raided 3 times. When farmer Hannes Bogaert was warned that if he did it again, he would be for it, he said, "If I want to do it again, I will do it again." Nazi officers came to his farm to arrest him whilst they were eating. He said, "Sit down, we haven't finished." And it was their practice to read from the Bible after the meal. He fetched the Bible from the shelf. He opened it, knowing the Bible from cover to cover, at a page with particular relevance to these 2 bastards who were sitting there to take him away. And he read that out in a booming voice. And when he'd finished, he said, "Now you can take me." He and his son died in concentration camps for their trouble. And I guess, in a sense, what I'm doing here today is repaying a very, very small part of the debt that I and my father owed to that enormously brave Christian family. But all that arose from centuries of anti-Semitism based on a religious interpretation which is now universally rejected by the church. Centuries of tolerance of ignorance, tolerance of falsehood as long as it was about the other, tolerance of abuse as long as it was against the other. And our self-justifying human nature means that if we abuse somebody, we simultaneously hold the belief that we are good people and sensible and right. Therefore, it must be good to abuse that person because I just abused him, and therefore what I did must be right. That's unfortunately how our minds work. So abuse breeds abuse in the individual and in the group. It is a running wild of tribalism because we're by nature a tribal species. And the process of civilization means that we don't behave according to our natures as we are born. We don't let children grow up wild. We educate them. We educate them to do things that are not really natural to us. And that is part of the importance of education in the avoidance, in the prevention in future of the horrors that we have seen and continue to see. But just as Jews understandably lament the bystander stance, at best, of most of the world, whilst millions were slaughtered, others have a right to our fight for their right to life and to their right to live as human beings with all the entitlements due to any human being. I have marched in protest with Sunni Muslims until my feet bled and sheets of skin came away. And I felt so ill that if I carried on, I would end up in hospital. Last week, I was outside the Pakistani High Commission, joining the British Pakistani Christian Association in protest against the death sentence by hanging upheld recently by Pakistan's Supreme Court for alleged slander against Muhammad under Pakistan's outrageous blasphemy laws, which are a useful and lethal tool to settle personal squabbles. I am here as a non-Christian precisely because it will not do to complain only about injustice to our own group. There is only one race, the human race. There is only one tribe, the human tribe. There is only one God, the God who represents the good in all of us. Thank you.